Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is still Sunday, August the 18th, 2019, and back again with my gal pal posse, the awesome twosome, Lisa Flamino Rush and VZ Rieger. And we're going to continue our talk about what happened in the crystal room today. I'm not quite sure what we're calling this yet, so.
It was a big day.
Yes. So
lunch break in the crystal room.
Yeah, there we go. I like that.
It's a playlist,
right? So we left off with, I don't know what that was right at the end there with me, but
go back and look.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check that out. But it has, well, that whole thing feels like it's been coming up a lot around me in particular. So there's obviously something in it for me, but apparently a lot of folks, because it's, you know, there's a lot of it making the rounds. So, and I think that's too part of what we were going to talk about. So BZ, you take us into the next, because I don't want to skip ahead, because I'm not quite sure. I don't have your list in front of me. So,
well, your thought and deed are becoming inseparable. So let's start by playing with both of you feel into that, and what feels the first thing that comes flowing to you with that? Your thought and deed are becoming inseparable.
I know what Lisa said the first time around about that. Do you remember what you said, Lisa?
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to, because I say it's so many things. But I do, this is what kept coming up to me, is that to me, they're inseparable because they're yet in the same. To think a thing is actually to do the thing. So, yeah, that's what I thought of.
Well, you know, and I know I just heard some people going, huh, what? I don't get it. But you know, there is actually physical proof of that. And what I mean by that, there's scientific proof. Go YouTube, Google it, whatever, of athletes who train by sitting down and visualizing things. So that's, you know, that's the same thing as thinking it. And they've measured it, and their heart rate increases and all of these things. So, you know,
not just athletes, actors, all anybody in different fields and different things. It's being in the outcome and doing the run or the meeting or the this or that or the other thing. Yeah,
right.
And it's a very limited, constricted characterization and socially acceptable linear way to present what you innately, naturally have the capacity to do all the time with all things. And in these moments right now, which is what this whole series is about, is that we're not getting there, we are there. And as I said before, you know, that can be, as you're going to see, direct, empirical, tangible, touchable, clunky on the headable data about that. Can be Yahoo, cosmically delicious, or ouch, holy hell, that building fell on me, because, you know, my thought and my deed are inseparable.
Well, for those that have, you know, heard a lot about the law of attraction, you know, thoughts become things. They do.
Exactly. Coming at you in 3D.
Yeah. Right. And I would also point out, too, for those who that's part of the whole distraction, in gaining the focus and attention for the collective.
Right.
Because of the creative power that the all wields, the singularities who don't know that they are the all, as that focus and attention is redirected, and because you're creating consciously or not, so all the thoughts that you have, or if the manipulation that you've allowed for yourself, that we've done to ourselves, works in a fashion where you're not thinking about it, you think you're not thinking about it, but because we're being bombarded by stuff in every moment of every now, that causes thinking to occur, right? And if you're not paying
unless
attention,
we choose to consciously take control of and be fierce about what we allow, to be in our sphere, to be in our focus, and for the several people just said, yeah, but I have to go at work and I can't control. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You are sovereign in your beingness. And even if you go foray into different energetic envelopes, different fields, different coherence fields with other things like at work or something like that, you absolutely can. It has to be intentional, because if it's just lackadaisical, if it's not paying attention, if it isn't intentional or conscious at all, then you're still creating that. It's just a haphazard. It's a little of this, a little of that, a dash of this, a dash of that, a plunk of this, a plunk of that, a splat of this, a splat of that. And this is all conversation, the lunch break in the crystal room is to really bring forward crystal clear now that this is where we are, and we will see dynamic, really amplified proof, tangible results, manifestations, outcomes, however you want to phrase it, of that right this minute. And like I said, some is going to be wonderful. You may characterize as wonderful, and some you may characterize as god-awful, terrifying, or uncomfortable, or chaotic, or all of those things. And you pilot the ship. And the question is, are you piloting the ship consciously now? Because the thought and the deed is inseparable this moment.
Lest you think it's not, let Sheila be your guide. I'm telling you. I mean, I very clearly had some thoughts about my computer a little earlier, and that has materialized right immediately.
Right in time for this conversation.
Yep. Right in time for this conversation. That's right.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
And a side note, she's not on her computer.
Yeah, nope, not on my computer. And Lisa's not on my computer either. She's on her phone. I'm actually on Lisa's computer. So, yeah. But yeah, no, we all sort of, I think most folks grew up hearing that, well, if you have those kind of thoughts, you just keep them to yourself. That sort of, well, at least I did. That's what I heard growing up. And that sort of thing, like it wouldn't matter if you're thinking that thing and but you don't ever speak it. But that's not so. The thinking of it, it's an energetic. It's
yes, you are giving voice to it, and that can be where you hear it audibly through your vocal cords. But nonetheless, you're an instrument. All of you is an instrument. All of you is a transmitter, and so you are giving voice to that And because of, well, it's interesting. Excuse me. No, off. That's the crystal room chair. Don't sit in it. Just for me. There's a couch over there. That's for you.
Sure.
He says, all this talk about the cool crystal room, man. I gotta check it out.
He's looking for a download. This is the magic crystal chair.
Yeah. I got my linear download.
Uh-oh.
I forgot where I was.
Well, I held myself up as an example of what not to do. And yeah, we were talking about the fact that thoughts are energetic.
Yes.
And that as, transmitters and receivers.
Well, I was going to say, and you were talking about that where, keep that to yourself and all that kind of thing, quashing it down. And that's another part of the design is kind of that whole, it's a trending thing in our lives from the time that we're tiny, somehow thinking if we keep something on the down low in here, it won't affect out there, but it does. Again, it's one of those convoluted, one of those twist things, because we're not realizing the power of what's going on, and oftentimes it's that, it's a very common program, and it's one of the most insidious ones, where it's that little voice, oh, you're not good, you're small, not good enough, all these kinds of things, and that's constantly thwarting, because it's in a loop that just repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats, and it's repeating that, conjuring that creational force over and over again. It isn't good or bad. That isn't how energy works.
It is.
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
Well, that's why.
What it is.
So you can see, that's a good example of how you can see that it's inseparable right now. So have you noticed that with your journey and your flow that you've been doing that less and less, and so you'll see results of that because the thought and the deed are the same thing? Or is there one thing that you do that a lot of and things can be going good, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, these things thwart it? And what we're working to in the end of this, whole conversation, which is in many parts, is that the time lag, because of the linear, because of the polarization, because of the dualistic nature, because of the jump we're making, have been making, and with the full moon and all that kind of stuff, and as we roll through the last of the Lion's Gate energy in Leo and move into Virgo and all of the energies, the spheres, the celestial arrangements of all of that, it's the completion, it's the culmination in this cycle of this hyper accelerated evolution and ascension, that it's the birthing of that the birthing of the Trinity, which is you imploding into you and the new being created. Another way to say it is the birthing of the new earth in full form, walkable, tangible, manifested form. And another way to say that is that with that shift, the things that were inherent in the energies which we are not in anymore, in the scientific alchemical components of the greater density and the more constricted dimension of third and fourth dimension, they're not there anymore. So in absolute linear terms, there was a gap between the two, and now There is no gap. They're inseparable.
Right.
So like I'm saying, if you were one who said, I can't wait to, or when this, great. But if you haven't been using the flow and the time and the expansion and the integration and the learning and your consciousness, your evolutionary process, which is hyper accelerated, to do the cleaning and clearing and integration, you may be rethinking just how spectacular the fact is that there's no gap between the thought and the deed. Or the I want to and this, or I don't have and I don't haveness.
You gave a really good one when we first were discussing this topic. BZ, you gave a really good I'm going to use the word reasoning, but it's not the right word. Explanation, actually, as to why that is. That gap isn't there. You've alluded to here, but I'd like to tease that out just a little bit more. You actually stated, and I feel you were correct, with the changing of the energetics, the gravity has changed, the density has changed, and that also has played into the closing of the gap of what you're speaking of, and that made a lot of sense to me. I mean, part of what everyone's talking about is moving from 3D to 4D, and I know that there's also talk about 5D and more, that because I'm sure that there is a range that we inhabit more than one at a time. Well, we actually inhabit them all.
I was going to say.
But
there's a range.
Right, but
non-linearized and bend that way, yes.
Right. For the game as I understand myself to be playing it at this point, the game with which I've set up for myself at this point, I'm pulling more and more of the larger portions of me into this lensing focusing mechanism, and the gravity and the density is changing where this physical lensing focusing mechanism resides. And so that's what we were speaking on as to why that gap. Yeah, we do have all of them, but
the space has dematerialized because the actual molecular, to describe it in one frame, the actual molecular components do not exist anymore that held that configuration. And because the energy frequencies are different, because the consciousness vortex, not quite accurate, but a good placeholder, is different, it does not have the quantum makeup capability to hold, molecular bubbles separately. So a thought, and it's got to match up with the deed, which both are coming from us, they were like swimming in separate things. And that also, on the are we there yet was a frustration thing, was a thwarting thing, was a keeping me from thing. Yes. Also a good thing, because we were I don't like that. It's characterized that way. I don't, we're unconsciously creating, not miscreating, because we choose, and on one level we're choosing to do it that way, so it's not a miscreation. But anyways, with those, the spheres kind of going like this, waiting to get to each other, that actually was a good thing, if you weren't saying are we there yet, because you could clean up, you could shift your trajectory. I've said many a time in little different ways that when I have epiphany, that that's it, bravo. I mean, I'm on my knees, and absolutely my life is horrific and sucked at that moment, and this shining beacon of clarity came in, and I saw this, I put out the thought and the deed came in, and it was so magnificent, the realization that I did that. And I was joyous, and absolute the refracting light and energy and insight of inspiration and acknowledging that I was the source, and I was source, kind of all levels at the same time, changed everything. Yeah, this I'm talking about was really, horrible thing, from if you were just going to categorize it from a linear aspect, but it was divinely inspired brilliance because it clicked on, and so I could then not only narrow the gap more and more and more and more and more, but consciously use the space in between of are we there yet, it's not here, whatever, to go, oh, okay, I realized what I did there. I realized the thought that came out there, and I'm going to polish it, massage it, or I could play with it in a more expanded way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
Now, this, in this last little bits of Leo, right? And then Leo from the zodiac, Leo from the month of August, it's a kind of, because nothing is sharp demarcation. So the little bit of the end of August and September, as we come into that point. So this would be we're like this. And come September, we will be like this, where they're inseparable. So we're in it now, because if they're locked like this, they're inseparable, and we'll have that holding of that.
Well, you were speaking on and I think you might have even said earlier in regards to the astrology. I do know that there's, with the birthing situations that are happening and the dismantling, that's also, because you can't have creation without destruction. Yeah. So there's a lot of both going on. And it is absolutely, the metaphors for all of this is definitely in the astrology as well. This whole Saturn-Pluto alignment has everything to do with structures and the tearing down of them, and then the rebuilding of the new ones. And so you're right about that, with the moving through that. It's just the data, the available data for one to communicate with oneself is so, at this point, so overwhelming for those that are actually looking for that information to see, oh, is there really something to all of this? Is, to me at this point, is to borrow some of what Q has said, is that at some point it just becomes mathematically incomprehensible that that is could be any other way. So
yeah, you couldn't possibly work hard enough to thwart seeing it, to thwart having your own proving, to thwart having the realization, because it's coming from inside of you. It's bubbling up. It's murmuring and whispering and shouting and tap dancing and javelin throwing all at once inside of you. Never mind from every other quarter, on every other level, on every other frequency bandwidth.
Yeah.
So what comes forward to both of you when you think of that the thought and deed are becoming inseparable? So we're in this thing where it's like this. What comes to heart with that? Is that, oh, joy? Is that holy shit? Or is it, what?
I am not gonna lie. There's a little of both. I have not fully deprogrammed myself from some of these things. So, but I'm not. So yeah, a little tinge of oh shit. But also, but enough of it to help me be reminded to be very conscious.
A
And
catalyzing.
say what?
A catalyzing point.
Right. So that, and when I say very careful, very conscious, very not, because being careful is ridiculous. It's just being conscious. If I do have a thought that, just pops in, that it may not be in my best interest, just noticing it right then and there and say, looking at it, rather than pushing it away, or, because
denying it.
That's really the only way, I think, to for me anyway, to acknowledge the fact that there's something that, well, there's a reason it comes in, first of all.
Right. Well, and that ties back into something that Lisa was sharing in the first part of this whole journey, the lunch break in the crystal room, and that was, she was recounting that, one could say nothing has changed, but everything has changed, and for her everything has changed. And we talked about how that then is her foundation for creation, for consciously creating. And so, Sheila, you just said, well, when something that comes in, I can then look at that, and maybe I want to change that. Maybe that's, not conscious, doing it consciously yet. Again, this is what I'm saying is it's not a broken thing. It's a organic moving us through, because it's us doing it, helping us to be us fully. So when that thought comes up, you go, wow. So it's catalyzing in that it brings you more present, brings you more conscious. You say, oh, I see that. And you can reconfigure not only your own phraseology and your own frequency of that in that moment. So it's now is this beautiful thing. It may manifest in the tangible linear as a little bit of a bump, but the gift that it gave, the expansion that it precipitated, now that's an exhilarating part of the ride instead of a super oh shit moment. or not, depending on how much of
what you do with that data. It's up to you.
Well, you said some, you talked about the one thing that you spoke of there for me, I have noticed in a very big way, and that is just being more present with myself and my thoughts. Have just in the being present of them, and what I mean by that, because I immediately heard somebody say, well, what do you mean? Of course you're present for your thoughts. But am I really? If my thoughts are just, and I'm one of those that, that was part of the reason I had so much trouble meditating is because my thoughts are just willy-nilly everywhere, and they still are to a degree. Okay, so it's not like I'm up here inside running roughshod on, oh well, we can't think now, oh God, I don't want to think nothing, please, I can't take any more of that kind of thinking. No, it's not, that's in the total resistance mode, like Lisa was talking about earlier. But being present with when anything does come in, and just, maybe even having a little conversation with myself. Oh, okay, well, what was that thought about? Well, where did that come from? What are we looking at that about? Or, in regards to just
Lisa's
being.
invitation again, right? To fear, because again, there's the two, love or fear. That's it. That's really, you can call them different things, different scopes, but it's love or fear.
Right.
And so the thought that comes through, it's a thought. It's nothing. It simply is. It's not good or bad. It's our characterization of it. It's our whole fear story that goes with it. It's it's the treadmill that we keep, hamster wheeling on it with it. And if you have attachment to pushing it away, or attachment to a good thought and a bad thought, instead of the energy frequency of that which you want to flow in with and attract to, create from, now you got a whole different guy. It just, that thought just sails on by, right? You pick this one or that one, or you go, well, what happens if I put these two together? And this is, oh, look at this. I don't think this will work, but I can take part of this thought and I can stretch it out. And I can put these two, right? You know what I mean? So now it's gone from this bad thought, don't think that, or got to thwart that or whatever, to, hey, I could tie all these things together, or I could stick them together. I could glue my poster of creation to the wall, whatever it is. Because now you are in the moment with the possibilities instead of attachment, to all things being a certain way or being characterized like we talked about before. Right. And now all things come to you.
Well, it's you. It doesn't matter what topic. So I know, like, I'm going to use money because that was like my biggest, like, that was, and occasionally still is my biggest, attachment, I guess I'll say. And really, what it is that I'm focusing. So it's not that I'm focusing on money, because that's not what's at issue. What's at issue is that I caught myself focusing on the lack of it. So that's the frequency I am emanating where it pertains to money. So that dictates, of course, then that the only experience I can have, therefore, is lack of money.
Right.
So, it's about how I'm focusing my attention. So it's either the fear, which again is focusing on the fact that I don't have it, and that I won't have what I need, which is so funny because I remember crying to my mom on the phone month after month. I mean, I think there was like years I did this where I would call her and cry about how I don't know how we're gonna make it. And she would laugh. And I think, I don't know how you can think this is funny. Because this is the end of my life, and it was quite secular and very regular. This, I don't know how we'll do it. And she'd laugh and she'd say, well, how did you do it last month? face.
You're still alive, babe. You haven't died yet.
You died. No.
And didn't you tell me about something that, Jasmine did here or you did that and this, and that's more expansive than the dying part. So, okay, how do you square all, yeah.
Right. So it all serves, I guess, in the end.
Cool. And right now, thought and deed are becoming inseparable.
Yeah, that's why when you asked the question,
so back
I had a little bit of oh shit.
That's right. So back before with Lisa would have her conversations every month. And she didn't have to do that. Well, she doesn't do that anymore, but she didn't need to do that anymore because they're inseparable. So there is no time lag, which is stupendously delicious or uber oh shit momentness, depending, and you can change it in the moment.
In an instant.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I think I said before, when this happened with my computer tonight, in the past, it would have been, I would have been really attached to all of it and feeling awful about all of this, but not being attached to it. And, I don't know what it will unfold or how it will, play out or work itself out. I just know that it will. I trust that it will. And, but that is part of the, oh shit for me, when knowing that they are, inseparable at this point, because already I've had a really good example, right, that I know, I created for myself.
And you added juice to that creation because what was the timing? It was around something that you wanted to partake in, right? You talked about 30 minutes to busy and it, right?
Yep.
So that because of that frequency for you, it amplified the go-ness of the perhaps not quite the cleanest, thing you wanted to think about. And it was Shazam.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's what I'm talking about. I think I'm talking about in this conversation, but also the other one is that's that eureka moment. That's that, and now's a really good time to have them but that you did that. And that's a yay, happy dance moment.
That actually, I think, would qualify as an alchemical epiphany.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I got a feeling there's going to be quite a few alchemical epiphanies happening for everyone, for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the good news.
Just remember that's what that is.
Yes, just remember that is very, very good news. And because I think, Beezy, you said too that it is going to be glaringly obvious, which is another point of all of this, and why I knew immediately when you said it. I was like, well, yeah, glaringly obvious. So as one goes through these things, as you realize, as the oh shit moment happens for you, and it will.
Or prior to, you start now. That's why the lunch break happened in the crystal room, so that we could at least entertain, think of, have the fleeting thought of, or not, you can wait till the oh shit, and it's going to be with the comma, parentheses, S's, S's.
Yep.
As in multiple, tangible, simultaneous occurrences.
Yeah. In a highly amplified manner, I feel.
Yes. Yes, because does the oh shit moment carries a frequency signature? Does that draw you in more, or does it go, oh, that's what they're talking about? Okay, yeah. Or is it, oh shit on 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 oh shit, and ho, okay, I gotta change something. You know.
Yeah. Oh, it's choosing. Always choosing.
Well, on that wonderful note, let's leave this energetic envelope here, and we'll go on to the next one.
Alrighty then. So same stuff, different video. Everything you need to reach any one of us is always in the show more section of this video. And if you have not already subscribed, please do. Located in the lower, well, on my screen, it's located in the lower right-hand corner. There's always a subscribe button there. And if you hit the little icon, you'll be notified when we open up. Well, when we upload, open. Yeah, when we open. So say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night.